the election. Why am I harping on this? My conjecture is this. If Abiola could make so much wave, could cover so much mileage in terms of the reparation movement, those who were going to pay must have imagined what he could do if he ascended the presidency of Nigeria. And in my conjecture, that might have been the annulment of that election. Now, that asks the question on that side. So whether that's enough to make. Enough on the individual side like MKO and Biola, but not enough on the side of the powers that be across the 50 countries.
The African Union, for instance.
Union. No, African Union is a lame duck. Forget about it. And I say that with all sense of responsibility because even the emoluments of their employees, or most of it, when you read through their literature and they are referring to development partners, they are looking for donations in order to run their services. It's a miserable thing. Do you want me to give you another?
I'm sorry, the African Union seeks donation to run the Secretariat.
Begin to read through their literature. It is replete with development partners, all along the way. I don't see them achieving anything along the lines you are talking about. Two, can I give you another shocker?
Go ahead.
The African Union Secretariat in Addis Ababa was built and donated to the Union for free by the Chinese government. $200 million.
Okay.
Go and check the records. Or to copy the Labour Party presidential candidate, go and verify. Even when others were shouting that you don't take this sort of gift. Some of us at that level in service, we were arguing and our voices were drowned. Why? What is 200 million that an African, even now, for God's sake, put that aside, divide it into two, 100 million each. Maybe South Africa, maybe Nigeria. Or divide it into 50 million each region. West Africa, Nigeria, 50 million. North Africa, Libya, or Algeria, 50 million. South Africa, 50 million. East Africa, Kenya or
Uganda,
or 50 million.
Rwanda.
Or divide it into 25 million. Couldn't you do it? What? It was the Chinese that built and donated for free the African Union Secretariat in Addis Ababa. Now, you can imagine, as a communications expert, if all aspects and all corners would have been bugged. Anything you do there, you get it. So that is my position on the African Union. To the story, those who gained and those who did not gain from slavery, right? Or those who gained at the individual level and did not invest. So what do you do? Could we continue to lament? No. Put slavery behind and look forward. And for me, one of the directions to look right now, with Donald Trump granting asylum on the fast track for some South African Caucasians, why can't Ramaphosa issue a presidential edict, presidential directive, and ask that they need African Americans in so much professions, these areas, 200 of them, grant them asylum and give them what it takes to help. So for me, reparation, we can begin to ask this, our brothers and sisters, African Americans and in other places, who are solid experts, to begin to come back to the mother country in order to lend their expertise towards the development of the continent. Because if you look at it, in the days of slavery, whatever a slave invented, the patent cannot be claimed by a person because he was a no person. He was a chattel, all right? So it was the slave owner who claimed the patent. And go and check the inventions that African Americans have lent to the scientific development, the scientific progress of the United States of America. So we have a solid pool of people with expertise in the different fields of human endeavor who can now begin to come back to Africa to help in developing Africa. Can we leverage on that? The answer lies with the powers that be.
Well, I'm hoping that the powers that be begin to think in that direction, because, I mean, that's, you would expect, I mean, we all would expect as a continent that, you know, this kind of narratives, what those who occupy public office, those who've been voted to lead, you know, these are the ideas that they would be coming up with. But, I mean, we seldom hear this kind of things. But for conversations like this.
But Ghana is on the right track.
Currently?
Yes.
Okay.
Offering automatic nationality to African Americans
who are willing to return.
Yeah.
Nigeria has a fair share of that number abroad who are doing fabulously well. I mean, at some point, I discovered that, was it the number 3 person at Facebook was a Nigerian from Akwa Ibom State. I mean, I've sat with a Nigerian also who's doing well in terms of arts, right? Very fantastic guy who's doing a lot of work. And you go to healthcare, you find Nigerians leading the pack across the world. You go to automobile inventions, architecture. In every facet, Nigerians are doing fantastically well. So why don't we have governments, you know, thinking in this direction that you've mentioned? I mean, if you want to come back home, we have opportunities. In fact, come back and lead the movement to turn things around, whether it's in architecture, whether it's in banking, whether it's in healthcare. Why are leaders not thinking in this direction?
No, but I think we have to look the direction of, let's say, China, the People's Republic of China. In 2009, in the Foreign Service of Nigeria, we have this. Every 2 years, we have what we call the Heads of Mission Seminar, and it is divided into regions globally. Asia and Pacific normally used to hold in India. Well, 2009 it was held. It was hosted by our High Commission in Malaysia. That was the one I participated. Then America, then Europe, then Africa region. Okay. Now, what happens is that the Policy Research and Statistics of the Department of the Ministry they are the anchor people, so they rake up topics and give to each mission to prepare and present. So in 2009, we presented a paper, and the topic given to us was technological transfer and acquisition, the Chinese model. I guess I should have a copy in this. Okay. And in preparing for that paper, in preparing the paper itself, I discovered that and all of that. But the other one that brings me in this conversation is the fact that they encourage Chinese in diaspora to come back home. And in fact, in Chinese use of language, now speaking, they refer to them as the sea turtle, because the sea turtle has the unique attribute of swimming to a remote island, lay its eggs there, hatch the eggs, and then
bring them back home,
and swim back home. So what did they do to get their Chinese sea turtles? They created and continue to create the enabling environment at home, that when you come back home, you are used, or you have standard facilities that you are used to abroad. This is from shopping malls to roads to utility, school for your children, and all. Something to bring you back home and make you stay at home.
Feel at home also.
Yeah, feel at home. One of the largest solar panel and solar energy equipment manufacturers, Suntech, S-U-N Tech, is a Chinese. I can't remember his name readily now, but he was educated in Australia. But he went back. Today, if you Google Suntech, you'll get there. Okay, so this is what they do. Are we ready? And I mean we, Nigeria and other countries, to prepare the enabling environment for Africans or for Nigerians who are living abroad to relocate home, much as they wish to? Is it with this state of insecurity? Is this the feature of dilapidated infrastructure or decaying infrastructure? You can't travel by road, you can't afford to go by air. Even when you're going by road, you're not sure of your safety from between points A and B, come home and live under this sort of state of near anomie.
Well, let me bring Dr. Tangshak back on the discussion table. Dr. Tangshak, talk to me about, something that I'm sure you'd agree with me has become a loud argument on the continent, and it has to do with African history still largely untold, or worse off, told from the lens of our colonizers. How can we reclaim our narratives?
Thank you very much. I agree with you. When we're talking about the education system, it is not about our history. It is their history in our land. And that is why you know that most of the histories, unlike the archival materials left, and then the fact that most of our history was oral, documentations were not too much there, except with our artifacts. But again, now what different communities do is to try to trace their history, indigenous history. As long as we don't have documentation, it becomes very difficult for it to stand as facts that can be proven, justified. But again, the generations now, as it is, the Nigerian government also contributed at some point, removed history from the curriculum at 2007 or thereabout.
Don't you think that was a good thing, especially when you look at the fact that the history that we were teaching our children was history as told by our colonizers and not history as told by us?
Yeah, but again, if you're removing or you're trying to change the dynamics, you must have an alternative.
Okay.
There was no alternative.
Right.
Because if they had insisted that the curriculum in every context should speak about your indigenous history, that would have been a perfect alternative. But what made them to do that, majority of the reason, was the one, they were trying to hide their own history as those in government, their perpetuity in governance, and also their corruption in governance, and how they also make their so-called wealth, as they call it. So they needed to remove that. And I give you an example. There's a book written by Maxillion. It's about the coup culture in Nigeria. If you read through the coup culture of Nigeria, you'll find out that the people that are celebrated today are the same set of people who way back in time, because of their personal interest, generated a syndicate that also kept changing government. They would say because of corruption, and at the end of the day. So if you look at the narrative of the 1966 coup, which would have been a change actually because of the young minds. But again, the same narrative kept coming up, and then corruption became worse by the inch. So yes, we still have a window in which our history can be changed. When the ambassador was speaking about China, he was speaking about Singapore. It is a reversal in brain drain. Lee Kuan Yew, when he went out, he was a brain, he was a top brain. But when he was asked to leave and stay in so-called developed clime, what many of our people do today is to stream out. He said, no, that will create the space to reverse the brain drain. And they did. Today, you're not talking about, but you're talking about a hybrid of the kind of system in Singapore that strives on meritocracy. You go to China, their culture also, and I'm so glad that I am also on this panel with the ambassador. His exposure and also his reading has also expanded and is also going to add a lot of knowledge and value to the listener. So it's not only about the theoretical aspect for those of us possibly who are, but again, you see the hybrid of the exposure and how he has also seen. We only just travel and then come back. He has been in a climb where he's changed to what you call today a global fighter or a global actor at the space.
Right.
Until we go back to our cultural history and rewrite our history for the younger generations. We're not just talking about them inheriting what we have suffered under westernization. And I ask people, When you say westernization, did they teach us the clothing culture? No. We had clothes. Did they teach us the cuisine culture? No. We had our own cuisine. But today, the Walmart, the supermarket, we have destroyed our market. If you go to eateries, today is the fast food thing. When we are also in generating to ourselves diseases because of the fast food trend. Did they teach us? Why do we abandon our own? So the simple line is just that we have abandoned our own line of thinking. We no longer sit in the informal classrooms under the tree where you learn from the knowledge of the aged, the old people in their storyline. Today the world is going back to storytelling. If you look at the films that we watch, most of them are coming back to Africa to take the storyline to act films that are occupying the global space. Is it about the films in Hollywood? Is it about what today in our own Nollywood? Only a few, and we're just trying to parade what? We're not parading our culture. Even as we try to pick Nollywood up, we're just parading mostly rituals, and then at the end of the day, after the film, you come and repent, and the rest. Is that not still the so-called westernization that we've been injected with? So just quickly, if I just to also add my voice to what the ambassador said about issues of the reparations. You see, it must be a holistic framework. And I love the way he said it must start from the individual perspective. And when he was saying it, my mind just went back to MQ Abiola. As an individual then, it was also from his own side, from the profits he was also making, from the issues of the ITT and then issues of Concord, he was paying back to society in his own personal way of reparation. To aspect of the wealth that was brought back for services, then he's also giving back to fight for. So the individual level in itself, which is the reparational support that you see in order, why wouldn't we do that? There are brains in diaspora. Bring them back. There are brains who have served this country as ambassadors, one to which you and I are privileged to also connect with him in this talk. Why are we not using a mentoring scheme for younger diplomats who should learn before they go out on service? These are the resources. How are you bringing them back on board? Now we have generals just in rank. How many of them have fought wars? We have professors just in publications. How many of them can really solve problems with their knowledge? We have technocrats that are just used to the bureaucratic kind of stealing. How many of them can really keep systems? So that in itself, I think the holistic approach should also of indigenous community. There are skills, there are creative aspects and minds in our various indigenous communities. And then to also the cultural and institutional rebuilding. But the state also has a place to play, because the conspiracy and the collaboration was not just about the Europeans or the Arabs in trans-Saharan trade, in transatlantic slave trade, but it was a holistic thing, and everybody should be able to be held responsible in terms of issues of reparation, which also would mean linking up to restitution and linking up to the issues of restoration.
Right.
I think that in itself will give us a holistic aspect and a framework or template that would really help to liberate the younger generation.
Thank you very much, Prof. In terms of history, Africa has very, 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 very rich history.
I agree.
If I didn't serve in Mexico, I wouldn't have known that a Mexican of African descent was once head of state of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
You can see.
Vicente Guerrero. He has one of the Atlantic coast states of Mexico named after him. He's buried in the Heroes Ark.
Oh, wow.
If I didn't serve, I wouldn't have known. And what was his history? His opponents in the battlefield.
Oh, wow.
And was pronounced president. But trust the white man with the blue eyes. He had an Italian friend who was a merchant navy, captain of a merchant ship. And they went through the captain to betray him. The captain invited him on board his ship for lunch or something. And he went on board, and he didn't allow any of his troops to board. And his Italian sailor friend went and delivered him to his enemies, and he was hanged.
Really?
Vicente Guerrero. Number two, the story of Haiti. What we are bombarded with in the Western press is totally, completely wrong. There was a General Louverture, a Haitian of African descent, who was able to defeat the man the French have always told us was a whiz kid, Napoleon Bonaparte. Louverture defeated him, and look at this. Around about the time when the British or the Americans were fighting their war of independence, that was when they had their own war of independence. The slave uprising were able to defeat their French colonial masters. That is. Now they sent a delegation to Washington, D.C. We are fighting the same war. Can you recognize us? The Americans drove them away. Apart from faraway Ethiopia, there was no other African country at that time that was independent. They had nowhere to go. And because they had nowhere to go, the French imposed on them the most horrific armistice I've ever read. Have you ever seen anywhere in history where the loser in a war will make demands on the victorious side? So the French imposed, and don't forget, as at that point, at the American War of Independence, the French and the Americans were very chummy. Because the Statue of Liberty that you see on the gateway to New York was built by the French and donated to the Americans as a gift.
Right.
So at that time, the French and the Americans were very friendly, so they turned them back. Now, France imposed an impossible conditions for recognition on Haiti, and that means paying back. And that is why their budget never balanced, and that is why Haiti is underdeveloped. But nobody, and they don't allow these things to come out in any history book or no. Never. All we are bombarded is that our people are lazy, they are involved in all sorts of voodoo they brought from Africa, and all. You see, so if you look at it carefully, and I read a lot more, okay, so I don't know, maybe Professor may want to take the gauntlet, begin 1.4 billion, and India also above a billion. There are two countries who have over a billion each in terms of human population, demography, and Africa. But in the African case, we are over a billion in population, but over 50 countries, fragmented. That's the point, the word you use, that's what I'm coming to. So, and we are fragmented and aligned along colonial lines. Okay, so the manipulation is going on there, and I had wished, and I look, when I look back and read all of what he did and his writings and all that, I can imagine why the late Jeremiah Bafemi Awolowo that was never allowed to become president through electoral process, only for him to depart to the great beyond, and one of his ardent interlocutors would tell us this was the best president we never had. You see, the former colonial powers who study us and know us perhaps better than we know those who they should support in electoral process, not only in Nigeria, but all over else. My first diplomatic tour of duty was in Cameroon, just next door neighbor. Arrived Cameroon in 1990. And Paul Biya had been in power for 6 years. He's still in power. I've gone into the foreign service, I've retired, I'm 66 years old. Paul Biya is still in power. So which and what purpose and whose interest do you think is serving? It's obvious. So can we ever speak with one voice? Can we have a unified Africa? Perhaps yes, but it has a lot of exertion, a lot of efforts, a lot of homework for us to. Don't forget, one of the crimes, quote and unquote, that the late Muammar Gaddafi committed, if I may use the word, even though he has his own grounds with Nigeria, he sees us, or he saw us as big for nothing. he was pushing for a united Africa with a single currency backed by gold. I think at that point, the global powers have been, well, this guy has overreached himself, and then they went for him. And they went for him, nobody else could help, and all that. And today it is history. The chaos that's been created there is still affecting us directly in Nigeria. And don't forget, Muammar Gaddafi was the one who gave teeth to OPEC. They never forgave that. They never forgot, and they never forget. What do I say? It was after he overthrew King Idris of Libya in 1969 that he looked at it carefully and said, oh, OPEC, look at it. You were formed in 1962. Even with you there, it is the oil majors that were determining the price of oil. So why should he? So he was the one that provided the leadership for OPEC to begin to dictate the price of crude oil. That too, they never forgave him. And we need to begin to look at people. At the beginning, in the 1960s, the Monrovia group, we belonged to the Casablanca group, the Radical group. That is the ones, people by the Nkrumahs and Nyereres. They wanted a united Africa, but that has not come to be. And I think united Africa, given our size in terms of human and natural endowment, Nigeria must have to get it right. Not until we get it right, Africa cannot get it right. I keep on saying this. Japan arrived, Asia didn't move. Singapore, Asia didn't move. South Korea, Asia didn't move. Until the giant in the Asian room, the People's Republic of China, the moment they began to make it, they have enough capacity to drag on. So also, Nigeria is to the African room what China is to the Asian room. If we don't get it right, Africa will not get it right. So we have a lot to do.
That's sad. So the bulk of the work stops on our table to propel the continent as a country. I mean, time is running really fast. There's a lot that I want us to speak to, but I'm sure I'd leave that for the colloquium. I'm sure that the colloquium would attend to many of those issues. But just before we go, let me ask Dr. Tang Shak one final question. In your opinion, what urgent actions must the continent take? And when I say the continent, I'm referring to governments, I'm referring to scholars, I'm referring to citizens. What urgent action must be taken to restore what was stolen and heal from what was broken?
Thank you very much. And I must say that your action, the citizens across boundaries, and that urgent action is first to the aspect of loyalty to the existence of the fact that you have an identity as a person, and that you also believe in that loyalty to your country. But that loyalty is also from the perspective.
Hello, Dr. Tangshak. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, it's even if it's breaking, I think network is pretty terrible where you are. Hello?
I think it's just, yeah, hello?
Yes,
hello?
It's better now. Just help us finish up. Yeah.
It's better?
Yes, sir.
It starts with the individuals, citizens.
Okay, so I think that we might not be able to. It's breaking terribly, Dr. Tangshak. It's breaking terribly.
The network.
Yes.
But I guess, the ambassador, the thoughts for us.
Okay. His Excellency, just help us in a minute or two. What exactly, what actions, urgent actions, would governments on the continent, scholars like Dr. Tangshak, and citizens like myself, what urgent actions do we need to take to restore what was stolen and heal what was broken?
For me, you can never do anything successfully without a solid intellectual grounding. And again here I refer to China. when Deng Xiaoping, the father of modern China, wanted to open up China, he constituted a committee of professors and that they should give him a plan. They call it Liu Ba San. I think 638, plan 638 they call it. That was what I was just searching on my
Okay.
Because we did a report on that. So there is need for the leaders to assemble experts in different and put in place a plan of action in the immediate, medium, and long term in order to begin our way out of the woods. But even at three,
no, I wasn't.
Good, you were not born. When under the Gowon regime, they introduced what they call the Udoji plan.
Okay.
The Udoji plan was by Jerome Udoji, which was a complete development plan under the Gowon regime. But the regime took out the welfare of the Udoji plan for implementation while leaving the others, which jump-started the inflationary trend of those days. So much so that people who got money went to the shops to buy motorcycles could not ride the motorcycle, they had to push it home. This is to describe the way it happened. Now we have had Plan 2000, Development Plan 2000. However, under the Gowon regime, we were on the right track. We were indulging in the 5-year development plan, okay, which was actually pushing us in the right direction. For so much so that Philip Asciod, one of Gowon's super PEMSEC, who is still alive, did a paper once, which I have a copy in my archive, where he claimed that by the time General Gowon was overthrown in 1975, Nigeria was already on the verge of being declared an industrialized country. And why? Gowon began to build the Ajaokuta steel mill, steel rolling mill in Ogbomosho, Jos, Katsina, and the Alaja steel mill. By 1984-85, as a young foreign service officer, we were on a visit to Dembelde State. Alaja steel mill was fabricating brake drums for Peugeot automobile of Nigeria and Kaduna. Now, somehow we jettisoned the 5-year development plan, and I believe in that because if after 2 years you come to the table.
Look so much, Your Excellency, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's a delight. Also, it's been a delight speaking with Dr. Santos Ayuba Larab Tanshak, a lecturer of history at the University of Jos, is a cross-cultural historian analyst. I hope that I can say very well thank you for your time this morning on Issues That Matter.
Thank you for having us.
And now look at the network. It allowed you to say that, very okay. I wish it allowed you because I really wanted to hear your perspective on that. But I'm sure the colloquium will take that up from where I'm stopping right now. Thank you so much. And, I'll just wrap up Abuja and Nigeria, those listening to the show. History isn't just what happened. I know it's not just what happened. It's what we choose to remember and what we decide never, ever again to repeat. So maybe the question is, what are we choosing to remember? What have we chosen not to allow to happen again? From stolen centuries to stolen futures, the time to reclaim both the stolen centuries and the stolen futures is now. You've been listening to Issues That Matter, the extended Africa Day edition on Montage 99.7 FM. Thank you so much for being a part of it. The conversation continues at 11:30